Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Wealth Wednesday. I'm your host, Dr. Kalpana Sundar. With me is my co-host, Marisol Uribe. And 2 weeks ago, we talked about habits that keep women broke. Today, we're going to talk about habits that keep men broke because we're all guilty of the same things, whether we're men or women. It's just a little different depending on what our problems are. But none of us are perfect. That's the important thing. And we all could stand to improve and create better habits for ourselves. So that's what we want to talk about today. So when it comes to men, men do different things than what women do. So, they're not so much in the nurturing trap like women are. We talked about this 2 weeks ago. But what men do is they get caught in a reaction trap. So they will make impulsive financial moves during crises instead of having an evidence-based plan. And that can really get them into trouble.
Oh, yeah. When it comes to being reactive, that's tough. I mean, you're hit with something right out of the blue, seemingly left field, and they need to have some sort of reaction, right? And oftentimes it's not a planned response, where a response is something where they actually plan out ahead of time, like an emergency preparedness plan. Or like that's why they call us first responders in the medical world because we're responding to something that we've already thought through. But when you don't have a response plan, you're very reactive, yes, like you're saying.
Exactly. So the one thing is when you make a financial decision, you should also plan for the contingencies. What are you going to do and try to stick with your plan instead of being reactive? So one example is in March of 2020, millions of men actually panic sold at the bottom of the market during COVID. And then the S&P 500 actually fully recovered in 5 months. So the
Mhm.
ones who panic, made impulsive decisions, they had some pretty big losses that were permanent,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah,
So these are important things to keep in mind.
right. Because if I didn't have a plan, I probably would have done the same thing. The emotions would have gotten the best of me.
Before I invest in anything, I always have a plan on how long I'm going to stay invested. What am I going to do with this? Am I going to get out? When I invest into my, retirement funds, I just knew that I wasn't going to touch that until I was 67. I mean, I could touch it earlier, but I just didn't want to until 67 or later. That was just my plan for myself. So no matter what, that's been written in stone since I was 20 years old, and I just don't touch it. So that's something that I don't even think about. But other people, that's not how they operate. They touch it, they take things out, and they pay a penalty that's 10%. Then they just wind up getting in a mess. Whereas if you just, I don't know, I just kind of forget about those things if I'm not supposed to touch it. So I think that's really just very, very important strategy. Always have a plan for what you're doing with this money, whether it's a stock market investment, whether it's a long-term investment, whatever that is, you should know what you're planning to do ahead of time with that.
Absolutely.
And then we have the next problem that men do, and I think this is probably a really big one, honestly. It's the lone wolf strategy. They just independently weigh options without a framework, without consulting anyone. It's kind of like how they don't like to ask for directions. They just don't want to ask for directions when it comes to anything. They will rely on their research and all of these things. But here's the thing, this has nothing to do with how intelligent you are. It has everything to do with there's not one person can know everything about everything. And that's what we need to understand. And I am a big believer of that. I know the things that I know very well, but I'm also smart enough to know what I don't know or have a good idea about, but other people know it better. So I consult those people. We talked about this actually with the last one that we did on women. Men should be consulting financial advisors, tax attorneys, all these people before they make any kind of decisions. Especially big financial decisions, when you get emotional, it's always good to have these people that you bounce that idea off of because they're going to tell you what they think.
And I think this poses a question of how does one lower their guard enough and to a certain degree, pride and arrogance to be open to the input of a professional?
That is a very good question. So historically, and I'm not pointing fingers, and we're not doing this. We're doing this to be of service to people,
Yes.
because we all, men and women, theoretically have different issues that we address in different ways. And this is not absolute. Of course, we have women that kind of function like men in this way. We have men that function like women. This is not gender biased really, but it's just, I'm just going historically what most likely happens. But the reality is this: I think it's just coming from a place of humility, knowing that you cannot know everything. And
Mhm.
also, maybe, I think maybe really finding those people that you really trust
Yeah.
as much as you trust yourself. I think for me, that was the thing. I don't like to trust other people. I function more like a man in that way. I tend to be a little more like a lone wolf. I won't ask all the other people in my life to buy in.
Mhm.
But that was true until I found my people.
Yeah.
I have my people now. I know who I can ask what to, and I trust them, and I trust their opinion. I like to hear. So the best way I can equate this is going to a specialist versus a primary care doctor. So your
Good.
primary care doctor kind of knows the gist of everything, and the specialists know their little piece. So what I do is I consult all my specialists, and then I make the final decision on what is right for me based on what all of those specialists told me.
That's so key. And I'm glad you painted it in that picture because truly we have the final say at the end of the day, and we need to choose our tribe here. If you currently don't have a power pool of people that you can talk to when you have certain needs, then it's time to create your resources, your resource list.
Absolutely. And also, I think when I say that too, we have to have our own agency in this. So I also don't think it's a great idea for a person to ask all their people and leave it to them to decide. No, no, no. I'm saying listen to them and have your own agency and make your best decision for yourself.
Yes, of course.
So
It's in the giving yourself the education through the lens of the professionals to help you make that final choice.
100%, 100%. And then the last big thing is that, men tend to have some purchases that make them feel good. And those purchases satisfy their ego over their equity, unfortunately.
Mm.
So a lot of men will tend to prioritize status driven purchases to appear successful, appear competitive in the workforce, rather than looking at how much those things cost them in the bottom line when it comes to driving their growth of their own wealth. So the two most common wealth destroying purchases for men are cars and watches.
Oh,
Both
I
of
was
them.
going to say golf.
What was that?
I was going to say golf.
So, actually, that should be a third,
Yeah.
honestly, because I think we can't say absolutely, because some men I know do a lot of really good business while playing golf. So maybe that makes sense, but it is an expensive hobby. It really is. So again, but the cars, they depreciate the minute you drive them off the lot. The watches also depreciate. So if you look at, the reason that men buy this is to feel good about themselves, impress other people. But for example, if you have a $75,000 Mercedes at the age of 34, you want to feel good about yourself. It starts to really add up. A $1,500 a month, that $1,500 a month that could go into a brokerage account instead. At the age of 50, that is a large amount of wealth that's accumulated.
Yeah, true. And the car industry gets their money with the financing.
100%.
And same with, the watch industry. People could get loans for watches too, but it really, some of them can hold some sort of like equity components, like the high-end watches uh,
Right.
that people end up trading and
Mhm.
stuff. Same with the cars. Some people could be strategic about how they sell their used vehicles. And there's like a whole, hacking calculator thing that you could do
I was just about to say that there's
that
watch
we can
hacking.
actually help you with.
Yeah,
But
there's watch hacking, there's car hacking, and if you're going to do it, I say do it like that because that's probably smarter than just buying something. And that's what I plan. If I buy a luxury car, I'm going to do it more in the hacking way, where I buy the right car, know how to sell it properly, where it's actually making money for me as opposed to just being a depreciating asset. And then the other thing I will say is that from Rich Dad Poor Dad, he said, make sure that your assets fund your liabilities. So there's also another way to purchase cars where you have an asset, let's say a business, and that liability is the car, but the asset funds the liability.
hmm
There are a lot of smart ways to do things, but most people don't. They just get excited about things and they just purchase them.
yes, yes, they could purchase them liquid, where if you advance certain strategies, that could sort of be a neat play that you could strategically do to, like you said earlier, do make it make sense in the math world so that it's almost like you're winning by driving the car.
Exactly. Exactly. There are ways around this. There are ways definitely around this. But again, you need to know the right people who can help you with the right strategies, who show you how to do these things as opposed to you just purchasing a car and having a depreciating asset.
Yes, exactly.
Well, again, hopefully this was helpful to everybody, and we will, definitely keep on doing this. I thought this was a great conversation because we talk about how to always strategize our wealth, but we also don't talk about the things that kind of keep us broke. So this was a great topic, I thought, and so great to have you on here, Marisol, as always. And everybody, we'll see you in another couple of weeks for the next Wealth Wednesday. Have a great Wednesday. Bye for now.